Have you heard this story? 1985, London Underground, a homeless man singing Bohemian Rhapsody. And then, what happened next is absolutely unbelievable. Freddie Mercury himself was there, and he stopped his Rolls-Royce. But the reason was something nobody expected. This tale has spread across the internet like wildfire, shared millions of times on social media, discussed in fan forums, and recounted in bars and coffee shops around the world. It's a story that seems almost too perfect to be true. A legendary rock star encountering a struggling street musician performing his most famous song, and what follows is an act of kindness that supposedly changed both their lives forever. But before we dive into whether this story is real or fabricated, let's explore why it resonates so deeply with people and what it tells us about Freddie Mercury, the man behind the legend. In 1985, Queen had performed at Live Aid. Freddie Mercury was at the peak of his career. But very few people know that Freddie would walk anonymously through the streets of London every week. Freddie's childhood wasn't easy. Born in Zanzibar, raised in India, his family had come to England as refugees. He never forgot who he was or where he came from. The year 1985 was indeed monumental for Queen and Freddie Mercury. On July 13th of that year, Queen delivered what is widely considered one of the greatest live performances in rock history at Live Aid, the massive benefit concert held simultaneously at Wembley Stadium in London and JFK Stadium in Philadelphia. Their 20-minute set electrified the crowd of 72,000 people at Wembley and was broadcast to an estimated global audience of 1.9 billion people across 150 nations. Freddie commanded the stage with such magnetism and power that even fellow performers watched in awe from the wings. By this point in his career, Freddie Mercury had become one of the most recognizable faces in the world. Queen had sold tens of millions of records, toured globally, and created some of the most iconic songs in rock history. We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, Another One Bites the Dust, Crazy Little Thing Called Love, and of course, Bohemian Rhapsody. The band was at an absolute commercial and artistic peak. But who was Freddie Mercury before the fame? Born Farrokh Bulsara on September 5, 1946, in Stone Town, Zanzibar, now part of Tanzania, Freddie's early life was indeed marked by displacement and cultural complexity. His parents, Bomi and Jair Bulsara, were Parsis from the Gujarat region of India who had settled in Zanzibar, where Bomi worked as a cashier at the British High Court. Young Farrokh was sent to boarding school in India at age 8, where he began studying piano and formed his first band, the Hectics. In 1964, when Freddie was 17, the Zanzibar Revolution forced his family to flee to England as refugees. They settled in Feltham, Middlesex, a working-class area of West London. The family lived in a small apartment, and young Freddie, who would later adopt the name Freddie Mercury, had to adapt to a completely new culture while dealing with the trauma of displacement and the challenges of being an immigrant in 1960s Britain. This background is crucial to understanding Freddie's character. He knew what it was like to have nothing, to be an outsider, to struggle. Despite achieving massive fame and wealth, those who knew him well often remarked that he never truly forgot his humble beginnings. He was known for his generosity, particularly towards struggling artists and those less fortunate. This context makes the story of the homeless singer feel plausible. It would be entirely in character for Freddie to stop and connect with someone in a similar situation to where he had once been.
That day, Freddie was leaving the studio, heading home. When his driver was passing the Rolls-Royce through Piccadilly station, Freddie suddenly said, "Stop." A voice was coming from the stairs leading down to the underground. Someone was singing Bohemian Rhapsody. But they weren't just singing, they were living it. Freddie descended the stairs. There sat a man in his 40s, an old broken guitar. Next to him, a cardboard box, a few pennies. But his voice, it was incredible. Piccadilly Circus Underground Station is one of London's busiest transport hubs, located in the heart of the West End. In the 1980s, as now, it was a popular spot for buskers, street musicians who performed for spare change from passers-by. The station's acoustics, created by the tiled walls and arched ceilings of the underground passages, could make even modest voices sound fuller and more resonant. The image painted here is vivid. Freddie Mercury, one of the world's biggest rock stars, riding in his Rolls-Royce through the streets of London when suddenly he hears something that makes him stop everything. The idea that he would hear someone performing Bohemian Rhapsody, arguably his masterpiece, and certainly one of the most complex and ambitious rock songs ever recorded, would naturally pique his interest. Bohemian Rhapsody is not an easy song to perform. Released in 1975 as part of Queen's album A Night at the Opera, the nearly 6-minute epic combines elements of ballad, opera, and hard rock into a seamless whole. Its vocal arrangements are extraordinarily complex, featuring intricate harmonies that Queen created by overdubbing vocals dozens of times in the studio. For a street musician with a battered guitar to attempt this song, let alone to perform it in a way that would catch Freddie Mercury's attention, would require exceptional talent. The detail about Freddie descending the stairs is important. This wasn't just a casual glance from a car window. According to the story, he physically left his comfortable vehicle to investigate. This action speaks to curiosity, interest, and a lack of pretension. Many celebrities in similar situations might have simply driven on, perhaps making a mental note of the interesting encounter. But the story suggests Freddie was compelled to investigate, to connect with this voice that had somehow captured his attention. Freddie stopped. People began to recognize him, but he didn't pay attention. He was only looking at that man. When the song finished, Freddie asked, "What's your name?" The man was confused. "Michael, sir." Freddie smiled. "Michael, where did you learn this song?" "From the radio, sir. It's your song. Your—" And then Freddie did something that shocked everyone. This moment in the story is particularly poignant. Imagine being this homeless street musician, let's call him Michael, as the story does, and suddenly realizing that the actual creator of the song you're performing is standing in front of you. The stammering response, the formal sir, the mixture of embarrassment and awe, these details ring psychologically true. The fact that Freddie began to recognize him, but he remained focused on Michael, demonstrates a quality that many who knew Freddie have described. When he was interested in something or someone, he could be remarkably focused, almost oblivious to external distractions. Despite his flamboyant stage persona, Freddie was reportedly quite shy in personal interactions, particularly with strangers. However, when connecting over music, his true passion, he could become completely absorbed in the moment. The dynamic here is also interesting from Michael's perspective. Here's a man who has fallen on hard times, reduced to busking in the underground for spare change, and suddenly he's face to face with one of the world's biggest rock stars. The power differential is enormous, not just in terms of fame and wealth, but in terms of social status, confidence, and security. Michael's stuttering response and formal address, "Sir," reflect this imbalance. But according to the story, Freddie's response was to smile. Not a condescending smile, but a genuine expression of connection. The question, "Where did you learn this song?" is important. It's not patronizing or dismissive. It's a genuine inquiry from one musician to another. It treats Michael as a fellow artist, someone worthy of conversation and respect, rather than just a curiosity or object of pity.
Freddie went back to the Rolls-Royce. Everyone thought he was leaving, but he pulled something out of the trunk. His own personal guitar. He told his driver, "Wait at the park," and Freddie sat down next to Michael. In the underground, on the floor. "Let's sing together," he said, and they performed Bohemian Rhapsody together. Freddie Mercury and homeless Michael. More than 200 people gathered. Everyone was speechless. This is where the story shifts from heartwarming to almost mythological. The image of Freddie Mercury, presumably dressed in expensive clothes, having just left a recording studio, one of the most famous musicians in the world, sitting down on the dirty floor of the London Underground to perform with a homeless man, is the stuff of legend. The detail about the guitar is particularly significant. Freddie was primarily known as a pianist and vocalist rather than a guitarist. Brian May handled most of Queen's guitar work. But he did play acoustic guitar and was competent enough to write songs on the instrument. The idea that he would have a personal guitar in his Rolls-Royce is plausible. Musicians often travel with instruments, and Freddie was known to be someone who could be struck by inspiration at any moment and want to work on music. But the gesture goes beyond just bringing out an instrument. By sitting down on the floor, at Michael's level, quite literally, Freddie, in this story, demonstrates a profound equality and respect. He's not asking Michael to come up to his level. He's descending to Michael's, meeting him where he is. This is a powerful symbolic act, one that speaks to true humility and human connection. The performance itself, if it happened, would have been extraordinary. Imagine being one of the commuters or tourists passing through Piccadilly station that day and stumbling upon Freddie Mercury performing with a street musician. The crowd of 200 people mentioned in the story seems entirely plausible. Word would have spread quickly through the station, and people would have rushed to witness this unprecedented event. Bohemian Rhapsody performed in this setting would have been stripped down, intimate, raw, completely different from the layered, produced studio version or the theatrical live performances Queen was known for. It would have been just two voices, one guitar, and the natural acoustics of the underground. In some ways, this would reveal the true strength of the song's composition, whether it could hold up in its most basic form.
The truth is that Freddie Mercury's real life was extraordinary enough that it doesn't need embellishment. His journey from Farrokh Bulsara, a Parsi refugee from Zanzibar, to becoming one of the greatest performers in rock history is already the stuff of legend. His courage in facing AIDS with dignity, his revolutionary impact on music and performance, his complex personal life, and his genuine artistry are all part of a story that needs no fabrication. Perhaps the lesson of this story, whether true or not, is that we should focus less on whether one specific moment of kindness occurred and more on creating more such moments ourselves. Whether Freddie gave his guitar to Michael in a London Underground station or not, we can all choose to recognize talent, show dignity to those society's forgotten, and use whatever privilege we have to lift others up. That would be the real legacy of Freddie Mercury. Not just the music he created, but the inspiration he provided for others to be more generous, more creative, more authentic, and more human. So while we may never know the truth about Michael and the underground performance, we can know this. Freddie Mercury lived a life that made such a story believable, and that in itself is a remarkable achievement. The fact that people want this story to be true, that it resonates so deeply with so many, is a testament to the kind of person Freddie was and the kind of person we aspire to be. In the end, perhaps the most important truth isn't whether this incident happened, but that Freddie Mercury's music continues to bring people together, to inspire kindness and connection, and to remind us of our shared humanity, whether in a sold-out stadium, a recording studio, or a London Underground station. And that legacy, that's no legend. That's real.